Hey everyone, you're watching DeFi Talks with DeFi Dad. Hey, thanks for joining us. It's Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. We're talking on a pretty epic day in crypto. We've had a major sort of drawdown in the markets over the last few months, and we couldn't be, I think, timing it any better to be speaking about the importance of liquidations in DeFi. So I'm joined here by the team from B.Protocol, which stands for Backstop Protocol. It's a backstop solution, which we'll talk more about how it enables us to have more capital efficient and more reliable liquidations. And you'll soon discover just how important liquidations are in terms of DeFi and all of the systemic risk that you incur in terms of the different money Legos we use. So anyways, I've got Yaron Velner, who is the founder of B.Protocol and CEO of B.Protocol, and Eitan, who is the head of growth. So guys, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, I started to tell the story of what B.Protocol does. And, you know, we talked quite a while ago, not 2 years, but probably almost 2 years ago.
I think it was November. I think it was November 2020.
2020. Yeah. So that was almost 6 months after Maker accrued bad debt because of a failure of their keeper system or their liquidations, we'll just call it. And that was a very scary time back when we were just preceding like the COVID pandemic really, affecting everyone across the world, putting everyone into lockdown, and markets melted down. And, long story short, the liquidations that should have happened did not take place, and Maker was left with bad debt. So, sometime after that, you all, I thought it was you started working on it in reaction to it, or maybe you just foresaw what was coming there. And yeah, so let's talk about really like, what is a backstop solution in case someone is totally new to B.Protocol?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start, just with a kind of general intro. And yes, we spoke in November 2020, and I remember that because it was about a month after we launched in October that year. So yeah, just when we started that, it was, as you mentioned, kind of a reaction to what on Black Thursday. But basically, we pivoted since then, and today B.Protocol is on its V2, which is a user-based backstop. So it was maybe just kind of in a one line, B.Protocol is a liquidation engine for DeFi. We build and integrate user-based backstop pools into lending platforms, and these pools are basically committed liquidity, which is provided by users to handle liquidations as they happen on those supported platforms. Maybe it's worth kind of go through, a very short explanation on what, how liquidations actually work in DeFi. As I think, though maybe some of the listeners have been liquidated before, not everyone is really kind of, familiar with how exactly the mechanics of the liquidation is. So very shortly, once the collateral factor of a position, and collateral factor is different terms. It can be LTV on Aave, loan to value, it can be collateral ratios of Maker. But basically, once this collateral factor is reached on a specific account, meaning the deposited collateral that you have hasn't got enough value to actually maintain the healthiness of the loan that that account took against it, and then a liquidation will be triggered, and then someone will repay the debt, the loan, in return. For the collateral, we'll get the collateral plus a bonus, which is the liquidation bonus that the platform provides. So whenever there's a backstop integrated there, the repayment of the debt is being made from the liquidity pool of the backstop, instead of going through a DEX or AMM, and we'll discuss that shortly. And once this, the debt is being paid, the collateral is being seized plus the bonus, and then B.Protocol has its kind of innovative mechanics where we rebalance, we sell the seized collateral back to the, let's say it was USDC or whatever that it was used to repay the debt. So we resell the asset back to the base asset and redeposit it into the backstop pool. So yeah, that's basically kind of what we do. Maybe worth mentioning that liquidations are not only on lending platforms. Basically, there are different protocols in DeFi, derivatives, stables that kind of rely on liquidations for their healthiness, the healthiness of the protocol and its solvency. So yeah, I think that's kind of in general.
Actually, as we talk about that, would either of you want to screen share B.Protocol just to show the app? Because I think it brings it to life. Just kind of seeing how it is that you are aggregating all this liquidity and basically democratizing access to liquidations. So there's a whole incentive mechanism here that is allowing folks who basically participate through these different protocols using B.Protocol as like a middleware layer. It's allowing us to have more reliable liquidations, which it benefits everyone, but per usual in everything in life, and most obviously in DeFi, you have to have some sort of monetary incentive at the end of the day. You can make you can earn a portion of the liquidation profits by using B.Protocol.
Yeah, and those can be quite hefty. It's like anywhere between usually 5 to 10%. The liquidation bonus that the incentives coming from the lending platforms, plus at least the platforms we are integrated with and many others offer their own liquidity mining incentives, which backstoppers, those who provide liquidity into the backstop, also gain from that. So you gain both as a user of B.Protocol, you gain both the liquidity mining rewards and the liquidation profits that are made by the backstop.
Absolutely. And Yaron, anything you want to weigh in on there or add to as we're sort of talking about the importance of these liquidations?
Yeah, so like adding to what Eitan says, eventually liquidations are kind of the maybe unspoken but backbone of like most DeFi activity. So like for simple swaps might be the only simple operations do not involve liquidations, but basically like big parts of DeFi as we know it simply couldn't exist without it.
Absolutely. Well, Eitan, do you think now would be a good time to start screen sharing some of the examples of I guess like where does this play into DeFi?
So,
I think like again, like the most obvious example, which again on most days, I always think of this as one of the less sexy parts of DeFi. This is important to the backbone of DeFi continuing to work, but it's not, the next hottest yield farm. However, when we are selling off like this, I think we like the markets in general, let's say Bitcoin and Ether, I think are down 50% or more over the past month. I mean, there are lots of positions with leverage that are unwinding, and they're unwinding hopefully, or they're being liquidated. Because at the end of the day, we as lenders, I think the most popular use case still in DeFi, like we depend on these liquidations. Otherwise, I'm lending to someone who's not maintaining their loan, and I'm not going to be able to reliably get my money back, which defeats the whole purpose of permissionless, trustless DeFi lending.
Liquidations, in a way, a metaphor we gave previously, it's like a sewage system for DeFi. It's like where all the trash is going in, but without it, you wouldn't like your sewage system, in the building where you live or in your city, to break or even to malfunction for even for a short while. So I think that's kind of the same with liquidation systems in DeFi. It's something that you need to have it. Not everyone likes to to dive in and get dirty in a way, but basically this is what liquidation are. But maybe before I share screen and we kind of go through maybe let's talk about what's actually is broken, because something got broken now with some might say it was already broken, and now it's just being amplified in a way. But if you are forking Compound, or just opening your own new lending platform, probably one of your devs tasks will be to have a flash loan liquidation bot up and running as you launch, just on the to-do list. And these bots are either maintained by third parties or by the teams themselves. It doesn't really matter, but it will operate kind of the same, where the bot constantly or periodically will just scan the accounts in the platform, and once a liquidation is being triggered on one of the accounts, we'll actually take a flash loan to repay the debt. So let's give an example. If I put 1 million worth of ETH as collateral, I borrow $500,000 USDC, and now ETH dropped and my account is being liquidated. Someone, and that would what the flash loan bot will do. The flash loan bot will take flash loan, repay the $500,000 USDC. Will get, let's say, the penalty, the discount is 10%, just for easy numbering. So it will get 550K worth of ETH, as collateral. And now, because that's a flash loan, it needs to repay the USDC. So we will dump the ETH on the nearest DEX. It will sell the 550 USDC, or at least the 500, ETH, back to USDC to repay the loan. And all that needs to be made through one single transaction. And what happened is because DEX liquidity, mainly on as we mentioned, new L1s and definitely on some of the L2s, just got really shrank in the last few weeks and even months. The slippage that you get on the DEX even for small amount swaps is bigger than the liquidation incentive. So let's say anything above 10% slippage, price impact, as you will see, is just makes the whole transaction. I'm not talking about fees on the way and that needs to be paid. And this breaks the whole operation of the flash loan bot, and liquidation just won't be executed. So that's basically this is, and that became the norm. Like having a flash loan bot means your liquidation mechanics is kind of in the right place. Is it's legit, and this is how you can launch. And what we actually showed in the latest blog, we shared that actually it's not that simple. It doesn't work really anymore. So yeah, I can share a screen. I can just show a few live examples.
That would be great. Yeah, whenever you're ready, I'll share your screen here.
Yeah, so let's just start with you can share that. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yep, there we go. So we're looking at Aave V3 here, right?
So Aave on Polygon, Aave launched multi-chain, which is probably a good direction to grow. And they list chain link as as a collateral. And though it has like currently low liquidity, it doesn't really matter. There is 50% max LTV. So this is the collateral factor we were talking about. Meaning, if I'm providing 1 million of link, I can borrow up to 500K worth of USDC or whatever else I want to borrow against my link. But if I go to 1inch, which is a DEX aggregator, in case someone is not familiar with that, on Polygon, and I try just to liquidate, that's what the flash loan bot will do. It will try to dump the link, back to USDC. It will try to make a swap. So let's say 200,000 worth USDC worth of link will already get you. I don't know if that's small, if that's big enough, to see on the screen, but it will get you like a 13% price impact, like a slippage of 13%, which is bigger. The liquidation incentive here is 7.5. So it's nearly double. So the bot will just not execute this liquidation. So even if you need to liquidate just 200K of link, you won't be able. Aave won't be able to actually liquidate that position.
Yeah. Or maybe like more precisely, it will take a long time to liquidate, right? Because what will happen is that it will liquidate a small amount, then we'll have to wait for more liquidity, to flow into Polygon, and the hope is that by the time the full liquidation will be finished, the price will not decrease too much, and there will still be something to liquidate. But it definitely breaks, the entire flash loan model where everything is instantly being liquidated.
Got it. So for those that are newer to this, what's happening under the hood, whether it's through B.Protocol or whether it's individuals who act as liquidators. I mean, they're essentially using flash loans to borrow, to win an auction, let's call it, and then once that's done, of course they can then sell it all for profits. And this, again, these are normally, I mean, it could be smaller amounts of money, but it could also be larger amounts of money, which is where a lot of I think the discussion around risk comes into play here. As we continue to mature and grow as a DeFi market, the amounts of those loans continues to grow. There was a vault on Aave last night that people were following closely. I think it had around $280 million worth of Ether. And there is just, there is, I would call it, there's still fear in, not just because of the market that we're in, there's still generally an uncertainty around, will X liquidations happen when they should? What do we run the risk of accruing any sort of like bad debt when the market is in total free fall, which goes back to, again, what you all solve with B.Protocol. But guys, anything else here on the Aave or 1inch apps that you want to show off?
There's like multiple, examples we can show. There's like different platforms, and Venus has also some same issues with other tokens, and there's like and the bad debt is a real thing. Maybe I'll try and show like.
Hey, by the way, as you're pulling it up, so if someone watches this in the future, and we're not going to dwell on this, but I think it's good to just relate a more recent event to what we're discussing here within DeFi. In the last 48 hours, a pretty well-known hedge fund within DeFi, crypto, Web3, whatever you want to call it, they appear to have been blown up by the downturn in the market. It appears, without speculating any further on it, because there isn't a real confirmation just yet, announced by the team. It appears that they experienced a number of margin calls. Oh, there we go. Just re-adding your screen. And so, anyways, long story short, they owe debts. If this is true, this is a team that owes debts off chain, And, obviously there's a risk to those folks of not being paid back. And so like one of the concerns, of course, in market downturns is what are some of the, the hidden sort of ripple effects that we will feel as this downturn happens, and certain folks are not able to pay back their debts, and then that affects someone else who then possibly can't pay their debts, and you have this sort of cascading shit happen. So anyways, that hopefully sets us up for like really like these major risks that you're looking to solve through B.Protocol. And anyways, guys, what is RiskDAO here? Talk me through how does this relate back to B.Protocol?
Yeah. Maybe just to complete what Eitan said, about bad debt being not only theoretical risk. So basically, maybe if Eitan can scroll down a bit, yeah. So bad debt does exist also in DeFi platforms. Currently we see it in Venus, Iron banks with millions of bad debt. So it's true, it's not only because of failed liquidations, also with Iron Bank, it's a bit of a different setup. But yeah, eventually, malfunctions in lending platforms is a real issue, and you have a real bad debt. So maybe, I don't know, so like before moving to the RiskDAO, Eitan, if you want to complete the story about how B.Protocol actually solves and mitigate everything.
Yeah. So instead, as we showed on on 1 inch, that slippage is kind of breaking the liquidation process when it is managed by liquidation bots. Basically, what the backstop is doing, it's kind of a buffer that amplifies the available DEX liquidity. So we're not doing magic. We can't create liquidity where it's completely empty, but basically what it does is that instead of just dumping everything on on the DEX, the liquidity for the liquidation is taken out from the backstop pool, and then we rebalance this the seized collateral that we got from the liquidation gradually. So so we can actually do that without creating a price impact, which, as you mentioned, can create a cascading liquidation scenario.
Right.
And basically that kind of amplifies the DEX liquidity that's in there, and it's probably worth mentioning, and Yaron can probably do the math better, but in general, if you take 100, just because the way AMMs DEXs work, you need kind of high liquidity in the pools, because the slippage is kind of a feature there. You need high liquidity in the pools to liquidate small amounts. So even for if you have 100 million in an ETH USDC pool, 5 million will get you to 5% slippage, more or less, and Yaron can correct me on the math. And with B.Protocol, we can do the 5 million liquidation just with 5 million. We don't need 100 million. It's enough to have 5 million in the pool to actually make the 5 million liquidation. So yeah, it's definitely much higher capital efficient.
Yeah. So eventually, B.Protocol is kind of a buffer to amplify DEX liquidity. So once you set liquidity, which is available for liquidations only, without using Uniswap V2 formula, this way we can also avoid slippage. So we just amplify. Buffer always amplifies liquidity. And yeah, factors can go all the way sometimes to even X5 or X10. Really depends on the concrete numbers.
And also, once it's worth mentioning, once we can actually support better liquidation and kind of have the committed liquidity to do that, then platforms can actually both offer a better kind of a safety net for the lenders, so they are feeling more secure that as you mentioned in the beginning, lenders feel that they will be able to get their money back. And on the other end, borrowers can actually get better collateral factors, so they can actually get better capital efficiency on the collateral that they provide. So this is kind of
I did not realize that. So you do get a better collateralization factor. Let's just say you can borrow more against your deposits through B.Protocol.
So it's of course it's up to the lending platform to actually change the parameters, but this is what we show. We just had and that's part of the risk DAO, and I can probably elaborate on that soon. But basically, yeah, because you have a better liquidation mechanic, you can facilitate liquidations with a kind of a narrower buffer. The margin, that is a safety margin that you need to keep. As a lending platform, can be smaller because you don't need to kind of count on the DEX liquidity as it is. So yeah.
So in B.Protocol is currently available for Maker and Compound, but is there any other? Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah, and so Compound and Maker is our V1, but basically what we are focusing now is the user backstop, which is what we went through now, and this is available on mainnet for liquidity, so you can actually provide LUSD through the backstop.
Oh, that's great.
And basically,
yeah,
we automate the whole rebalancing part. So otherwise, liquidity users need to rebalance themselves. So that's on mainnet. We are integrated also with Vesta Finance, which is a liquidity fork on Arbitrum. With VST is the stable, so users can provide VST into B.Protocol.
Wait, so do you envision? Do you guys envision a future where B.Protocol is this middle layer that sits between basically users and whether it's Aave, Compound, whatever, whether you use something like InstaDApp or DeFi Saver, like it feels silly to me that there's so much money at stake, and like we talked about this back in November 2020. I really want to I guess press the urgency of more platforms to integrate B.Protocol, because I personally, don't sleep too well right now. Although I've got a problem with pollen in the area, so forgive me. I keep rubbing my eyes with. I've got like allergies or something. But anyways, yeah, it's such like a huge systemic risk to DeFi, with liquidations at risk of not happening or failing us. And yeah, I mean, if you are a token holder, I'll say it myself. Like if you're a token holder in Aave, Compound, Maker, Liquidity, InstaDApp, if you're a customer of DeFi Saver, which is another amazing like super tool, you should be pressing teams as a token holder to implement this, because I mean we're always just one major blow up away from like an existential crisis in DeFi.
So, yeah, it's probably what we're going through is kind of an educational effort, both for users and for lending platform teams as well. We want to get to a point where, just like smart contract risk, is something that any user know that, and also the teams, most of the teams at least know that, before they're actually launching, they want, there is a demand for an audit, to actually have someone, an outsider, a third party, to actually go through your smart contract and verify that everything is kind of in place. So we want to get that educational phase, into risk, into economical risk. So actually users of platforms, and the big ones, I have to admit, they kind of cover it. They have, this Aave, Maker, Compound as well. I think they have their own either or both internal risk teams, and they use Gauntlet, for example, as a third party kind of risk auditor that gives some kind of feedback and recommendations on on different risk parameters. But we want to kind of get that out, to the long tail platforms, to other platforms on other networks which do not have gauntlet, do not have the resources for a risk team, do not have the knowledge sometimes to actually have their users kind of come and demand that, from the teams. We need, we want to see that everything is in place. And this is how the risk DAO has actually been kind of was the base for that. And the backstop, B.Protocol is, bringing kind of a broader perspective of risk management in DeFi. So the backstop is kind of the tool that can mitigate that risk. But before you're actually mitigating the risk, you probably should know what's going on within your, your system. So this is where the risk DAO with its audits is coming in, and Yaron can probably, elaborate on the risk DAO.
Yeah, so like part of the efforts, like especially after we see our lending platforms kind of manage themselves after the liquidity contractions. So, we identified like a huge gap of knowledge and education, both on some of the platform and especially, for the broader audience. So actually we took an initiative and we launched together with 1KX Capital a DAO, which is called the Risk DAO, which is mostly, aims to increase educations, but also transparency and analytics around, lending platforms and maybe economic risk in general in DeFi. So one of the first initiatives was, setting up this bad debt dashboard. So now you as a user, before you use your favorite lending platform, can go and check, what is the bad debt of this platform. Because, like for example, you have Venus, with non-negligible bad debt, just says nothing to the users. So, obviously all the hacks, all the screw ups they're all public, right? But if you're a user that just goes there, you have no indication that, something went wrong there. And, bad debt, remains bad debt even after the hack was the bug was fixed, or liquidation was executed late. Moreover, like as a user, you have no idea, who takes best practices seriously, who doesn't, who just copy, maybe parameters. This is also something we see a lot. So you open a lending market, let's say, I don't know, an IoTech or Aura, like very small altchains. You just copy the parameters from Compound or Aave, because, obviously Compound and Aave have serious risk teams, but the market conditions, are very different in Aura, Phantom, all these chains. So yeah, this is the Risk DAO initiative of, educating both lending platforms and both the users, providing, public tools, also public risk assessments. So yeah, that's what we have in mind, setting it up.
Yeah, to just quickly summarize, and this is probably a good point for us to end on and reemphasize, what prompted our conversation was, I want to say it was a few weeks ago, I noticed it was either B.Protocol or one of you was just, tweeting about the fact that there is a real threat to alternative L1s and to L2s, which I kind of just, whatever, at the end of the day as a user, you're just moving funds from one thing to the next. And so these are, emerging DeFi Web3 economies. And I think, it brings us back to this very serious risk of liquidations not being reliable. And, I'm the first to tell anyone, hey, if you are hindered by the cost of transacting on Ethereum mainnet, you should be exploring. My hope is in the future we're all just using Ethereum L2s, and so one of the risks though while I enjoy using lending platforms like Aave on, whether it's Arbitrum or Optimism or Polygon, the issue is this lack of liquidity. And there's been a real contraction, which you all pointed out, in that liquidity as the markets have drawn down. And so it leaves us in a place where, you're wondering, like, will there be reliable liquidations? As a borrower, of course, that might not sound too bad, but of course, as a lender, you can be hurt. Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, no. So actually, in DeFi, all borrowers are also lenders, right?
Exactly. That's it. So it's at the end of the day, all of these composable money Legos are very interlocked, which again, you take that for granted until something breaks. And, again, if go back to Maker having this sort of, I'll call it an implosion, but thankfully, we're grateful they survived and found a way to basically pay back the bad debt there. But in March 2020, that was terrifying. I mean, that was that was a moment where it was like, is DAI going to collapse now that Maker has failed to liquidate these different loans? And so anyways, that brings us forward to today, where we grew from, I want to say, like we had less than maybe 10 billion in total value transacting just on Ethereum at the time, to now on any given day, I mean, it's well south of 100 billion, but it grew to as much as 250 billion. So, I don't know how to emphasize the importance of this anymore. And I mean, I'm not an investor in B.Protocol, but I just see them as a very important solution to creating like a safer, more reliable DeFi user experience. So I'm hoping that more builders take notice. And then as users, of course, it's actually really important to the adoption of B.Protocol that users opt in to depositing through B.Protocol, because it helps you to accrue liquidity so that you have liquidity. At the end of the day, you're accruing liquidity that helps with those liquidations.
Yeah, it's both, jumping in and providing the liquidity, but also kind of, as we mentioned, poke their, the team of the platform that they're using to actually, ask sometimes the hard questions, how did you make those, risk parameters in place? Are there any risk, that, basically bringing more transparency into this process of liquidations and the bad debt that can accrue from when it's malfunctioning. Probably that's part of the things, both B.Protocol and the risk DAO now that Wolf mentioning, we was launched as a kind of a service DAO together with 1KX. So yeah, definitely transparency is something that needs to be more prominent in the ecosystem, just like we have with smart contract audits. It's something users know to demand insurance, to demand audits, and now it's also about risk. I think that's kind of the main one of the main.
I'll just one last thing to note. Also, over the last few weeks, we have Celsius, which is a centralized borrowing and lending platform, but is allows you to deposit native crypto assets. And I'm not totally certain of what's going on there, but they've paused withdrawals, and there's a lot of thinking and evidence to point to the fact that they were using DeFi protocols to earn yield and just do all sorts of interesting but risky things in the end to pay yield to depositors. And I think the core issue, which we don't have in DeFi because everything is just painfully transparent because it's all there on chain. You have no privacy at the end of the day, at least once your wallet is doxed. The one of the real benefits here is that in DeFi everything is instantly auditable. So despite I think like rightfully calling out the risk that there is on these new alternative L1s and L2s that have less liquidity and stand a chance of potentially failing to be able to liquidate loans during a downturn, I think this all pales in comparison to still the black box that is centralized finance. So this is part of, that like foundational innovation that is there with DeFi, and I think notably with what you all work on with a backstop solution. But guys, anything else that you wanted to share here? I feel like we just about covered everything, but anything else that folks should know about B.Protocol? And also, too, reminder to them, they can follow B.Protocol here on Twitter. They can learn more about B.Protocol at bprotocol.org. Per usual, you have a Discord. I'd recommend they hop into the Discord, and you can really start to get to know others that are involved in the community. And of course, if you're a builder, check out their documents and hop on bprotocol.org. But anything else that we should cover?
Yeah, I think we covered most of it. Definitely, everyone is welcome to join the Discord. Very, engaged community. So, definitely everyone is welcome, both, for any questions and discussions, support, whatever is, you need, just hop on. Beside of that, I think the message is kind of clear. It's norms are changing, and solutions should follow the landscape where we are actually operating, and having a flash loan bot for your liquidation might not just be enough to actually keep your platform solvent.
I love I planned for us to talk for 20 minutes and we're at 40 minutes per usual. So always happens when I, get to talk about something that I really believe in. So this is I hope, like I said, more take notice of what you guys are doing with B.Protocol. But Yaron, Eitan, thanks so much for your time. So good to get to catch up. I'd remind everyone then, if you enjoyed this, subscribe at DeFiDad.com. And also, if you are a talented builder building a badass money Lego like B.Protocol, please consider getting in touch with me and my team at fourthrevolution.capital. And otherwise, guys, I'll end the broadcast here. We'll be in a green room in a second. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a